Coming up on That's a Great Point.
Well, and it makes it tricky. I mean, that it came up. It's funny that we're talking about this today because it came up so much during the course of the weekend when we were deep diving into healing, really. The definitions of words, it was like the number of times I got a ping to check in and ask people what that word meant to them because it mattered, like on a level that you just wouldn't even, oh, I never even considered that somebody might define the word that way. It's so
Hmm.
fascinating because it all depends on our experiences and what we attach to the meaning of the word. And it's like, and it's so important because you can throw someone into a swirl, like a mental loop that is super not helpful if they are defining a word very differently from you. And it's like, oh, okay, well, that's good to know. Let's unpack that.
Hey there. Today we're talking about identity, labels, and their effects on our behavior. How often do we assume what we have been told is the truth, even to our own detriment? How often do we tell ourselves things that just aren't true? Things like, I'm not good at that, I can't, or you're smart, you're stubborn, you're bad, or you're good. What does it mean to be a man or a woman, a parent or a spouse, an employee or a leader? Many times, becoming our best self means forgetting what we aren't, but hold to be the truth. So let's drop some baggage and become who we are meant to be. If you'd like to see us continue to expand our ability to deliver helpful content, hit those like and subscribe buttons. Thanks for playing along. Enjoy. Welcome to That's a Great Point, the attitude adjustment for your soul, where co-hosts Alina Doran, Michelle Albers, and Lee Smart discuss deep topics around a life well lived. Let's start the show.
Shall we start the thing?
Oh, it's already
The
been
thing.
started.
He already pushed the button. That means we're going.
So, I proposed we talk about the labels we put on ourselves and how those labels can either empower us or keep us stuck in a box of limited thinking. What
Yeah.
are y'all's thoughts right now?
Yeah, I think the duality of it is fascinating, right? Because we can take that label, like I can be like, ooh, I'm overwhelmed and claim that I get overwhelmed a lot. And I can be that as like something that stops me, or I can be like, oh, I'm in overwhelm. What are the tools and skills that I use to get me out of overwhelm? And I mean, same word, different responses, and whether it's helpful or not.
Hmm?
Mm. I was thinking about the topic, labels, and I was reflecting on how when we grow up, like from this tiny little young age as a child, we get accustomed to these labels. And I was reflecting on like what are the earliest labels we hear? And maybe for people who are Santa Claus observant, you hear like, oh, you've been naughty, you've been nice. At home, you hear, were you a good boy? Were you a good girl? Like, oh, you were bad. You were good.
Hmm.
Label, 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 right? Then you get to school. I'm bad at math. I'm good at English. I am.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Yeah, it's that thought of I'm going to try something once and I didn't do very well at it. So I stick that label, I'm not good at that, on my forehead. Now, for the
yep.
rest of my life, I think I'm not good at that. When actually, what it was, I just never took the time to learn how to do it. But we almost accept that label that we've given ourselves as the truth. Like, I'm not good at that, rather than having the growth mindset and trying to dive in and learn how to get good at something.
I'm so glad that you said that. It would be impossible to talk about this and not talk about the growth mindset and that was popularized by what Carol Dweck in 2006, and since then it's rightly so been everywhere. Like I had training as a parent in elementary school children on growth mindset and how to speak to your child and to be weary of those labels. And I'm so grateful for it. Mm-mm-mm.
Mm-mm. So I'm thinking specifically right now, how somebody who's had a difficult time concentrating, focusing their whole life will then go to the doctor. They get this label of ADHD. And at first, it seems like, oh, they have a label for this. It's almost like there's a relief, like, oh, they know what this is. They can put a label on it. Now I know that I have this issue. I know what I can possibly do to fix it because they've labeled it. And instead of actually doing the work to make it better, it's like, I have this. Therefore, I'm not going to be able to focus. I have this. I cannot concentrate. So it's like limited thinking versus I can have a framework for which I can improve myself. Because I've noticed that a lot of people that I talk to, whenever they assume this ADHD label, it's automatically I can't. I'm stuck within this box of attention deficit. And they don't even do the practices necessary to increase our focus. It's like, oh, wait a second. If you put down your phone and quit getting sucked into Facebook for hours on at an end and depleting your whole dopamine resource available to you, yeah, obviously you're going to not be able to focus. If you train yourself to be distracted by distracting yourself, that's what your brain learns how to do is be distracted. So, I mean, yes, you could fit within the label and it could be very, very true, but then accepting the label as like this, it'll never be any better. It's just what I have. It's how I am. Makes it to where we don't even try to do things to make it any better. And that's a big piece.
I think the tricky part is like we all have different capacities and like how we can navigate life, right? And I think the tricky part is most of the time when we're struggling, it's not uncommon to seek out, like, I need to know why I'm struggling, which means I need a word to describe why I'm struggling.
Mm.
And then sometimes those words take us to that place of, okay, well, now I know this thing and I probably pretty sure there's a magic pill for this thing, right? Or sometimes it's like, this is how I tick. This is why it's more challenging for me. And then what works for me? And we don't ask what works for me from a neutral place. We ask it from like that messy place. And I think over time, I'm like, I mean, for me, like the word was stubborn. Like I came into the world stubborn. The
Mm.
nurse told my mom I was stubborn because I held my breath through the whole bath. And over the course of my life, I was called stubborn a lot. And it used to piss me off. And I wrote a blog about it. And I didn't know my parents read my blogs. And my mom like sent me a text right after she read it. And she was like, I see stubborn as a good thing. It means you're determined to do things and you get shit done. She's like, I never meant stubborn as a bad thing. And I'm like, it's funny because for me, my perspective of how I associate with stubborn wasn't about them when I wrote it. Before that, it was. Before that, I was like, everybody calls me stubborn. They're so mean to me. And it was all about them, all about them. And then over time, it was like, hang on, how do I actually feel about the word stubborn and what does it mean to me? And for me, it's like, I don't fucking quit. I will find a fucking way if it's possible. And for me, it is about like, I am determined. I am ambitious. I am like willing to take a risk. I'm willing to be like, yeah, I'm stubborn. If it matters to me, I will be stubborn. And it's a positive word. But previous to like doing the work and really sitting with that word and asking why it had so much fucking power over me and why I hated it so much, I was just blaming them. Like they just put me in this box. It's a box I'm in. Everybody hates me because I'm stubborn. I'm an asshole, blah, blah, blah. And
Mhm.
it's just like, it's such a simple, explanation. But I do think we hang on like the definition and how we use that can either be like a crutch or it can be an empowering tool. But I think when we first sort of seek out those labels, it's because we're uncomfortable and we want something easier.
Mhm.
Maybe not every time, but often in my world,
Oh.
in my case.
Well,
Mhm.
labels serve a wonderful purpose. right? They are shorthand for communicating. We need labels.
Mhm.
They're efficient, highly efficient. It would take too long to explain everything and provide all the caveats and the nuances and the disclaimers. Much more efficient. So they serve a purpose. We need them, and labels aren't going anywhere. But when we're talking about labels that are limiting and unhelpful and like box us in, and there's this great unboxing, right? There's a great unboxing that happens when people really review their life and look at where they are, what's in the box. Do they want to be in the box? Do they want to step out of the box? Maybe the box is a really useful tool. So there's a point when you're talking about transforming that label from something limiting and something that you react to, something that you're, offended by, hurt by, limited by. There's inner work that I think all three of us do. I know all three of us do in different ways, but all three of us do the work of taking a look at the boxes and the labels and understanding what we want to do with those.
Yeah, many times the labels that are given to us early on become self-fulfilling prophecies. We're given, and so when we're young, we accept authority as being the truth. So whenever authority figures give us these labels, like stubborn, then we accept it as the truth, and then we actually live into those labels that we're given, just subconsciously. Oh, I am that way,
Of
so that's
course.
how I'm going to show up.
Labels, right? There's this great, even positive labels or labels that are meant to be positive. Like, he's a great student. Like, she's wonderful at math. They are also potentially really, really damaging because, if a student is constantly told that he's a good student and then he doesn't get that A, he messes up and he gets something imperfect, all of a sudden his identity is shaken to the core,
Mhm.
right? If you're good at math and all of a sudden you're having a hard time in calculus, you're a failure. So labels can create, even ones that are, seemingly wonderful at first, can create a very black and white thinking, a very all or nothing, a very much I'm a failure. You're always on the cusp of, as opposed to, about the whole growth mindset, being careful about what we praise a child about in those two examples.
Mhm.
You're a good student isn't nearly as powerful of a praise as I love how hard you work. I love how passionate you are. I love to see your drive. When you want it, you go after it. And it makes me so happy to watch you, right? As an example, as opposed to you always get A's. I love that. Like you're a great student, straight A's, so good at math. Because that just creates this pressure,
Well, I
standard
went
to
through
live
that
up
as
to.
well. Whenever I was going through school, I was told I was so smart. I was all the time, oh, you're so smart. And then as soon as I started to struggle in college, I hadn't built up any work ethic whatsoever at that point because it had always been so easy up till that point. And then as soon as I started to struggle, it's like, oh, well, maybe I'm not meant to do this, because I'm already smart. So this is just not, I'm not talented enough to take on whatever the subject I was struggling with rather than trying to work for it. The work ethic didn't come till later and trying to struggle through it.
So then the question comes, when we do recognize that a label has been applied to us, like boink, what steps do we take? What steps are available to us to empower ourselves and not get sucked into the box?
It's a step before that. It's like start to look at what labels do you assume to be true. Even before trying to figure out what to do with the labels, it's like, well, okay, what labels are you identifying with? How do you
Well,
identify yourself?
That
here's,
was a
yeah,
layer I wanted. Oh, go ahead.
it's like yes, and there's another layer of there are labels that might be applied to us that we don't resonate with. We ourselves might think are not true. And if perception externally is consistently X and we think Y of ourselves, that's also something to reflect on. What what is that about? And do I want to do anything about it? Michelle, you were going to add a layer
I was
as
going to
well.
add a layer to what you were saying when you were talking about kids. I was thinking about, it's one thing to say, I observe this behavior. I see you worked hard. That's great. But I think it would have been so helpful, or it would be so helpful, if more people would ask kids what they think. Oh, I see you got an A. How do you feel about that? What do you think you did to get that A? And make it about them so that they can internalize. And so, because I
Mm-hmm.
think culturally we teach that, listen to authority, tuck in and follow the rules, be good, quote unquote. But we don't ask them to like really think about what's true for them or what's different for this grade versus that grade or how they feel when they act this way versus that way. Like, how are you showing up and how does that feel at age 2 even? And I mean, I taught preschool and I asked them questions all the flipping time rather than just telling them how I thought it should be or what I thought, I mean, there were rules we had to stick into and whatever, but it was like, you know, think about how you feel about this and or what do you think is a good solution here instead of just giving them one or telling them what's right. There's many choices that are right, quote unquote, right.
Well, that's empowerment.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's empowerment. I'm curious, when you gave your children as young as 2, when you gave them this empowerment, right? And gave them agency, what did you see in kids as little as 2?
I mean, I didn't teach 2-year-olds. I did that more with my kids, but they get silly and fun. It's more fun. Like they'll come up with, kind of the farthest like out there sort of idea sometimes, and then you giggle and you're like, okay, but do you really think that's possible? Like sometimes it's like, they go so far into play that you're like, yeah, okay, let's reel it in and have some reality check here. But it's fun to explore with them because you learn who they are. They start to learn who they are. You learn who they are in that moment and you learn what makes them tick and you learn what they find fun and funny and you learn what they're afraid of and what they might not enjoy. It's just like, I don't know, if you just ask, I mean, a kid doesn't resist the question.
Mm-hmm.
We do now. You know what I mean? Because we have wounds and things and fear that would have been like we've conditioned within ourselves or that has been programmed or conditioned. So I don't know. It's pretty cool.
It's very cool. That innocence before the filters, before all of that conditioning,
Mm-hmm.
of just this pure excitement that comes out about what's
Well,
possible
yeah, and it
and
gives them
being
choice.
seen, right? And also being seen. Like,
Yeah.
oh, I get to, I can design, I can create this whole thing. I get to just paint all of it, paint the whole world.
Hmm.
It's powerful. Lee, you were going to say something? Mr. Smart?
Yeah, I'm processing right now. So much going on lately. I've got a lot on my brain, and I'm just noticing um, how often it is that we start to accept way early on how we are as people and take on these identities. Say like, I'm poor is a great one, and how we just continuously reinforce those beliefs. When we start to talk about limiting beliefs, this is many times exactly where they originate in the whole identity piece. So then we start to talk about identity. It's like, what identity do I want to create for myself from this point forward? What identity do I want to live into? And instead of like affirmations drive me nuts in that they bother me because many times they try and force you to accept things that aren't yet true. And when the subconscious hears things that you tell yourself, like for somebody who shows up late on a regular basis, and if they say, I am punctual as an affirmation, immediately there's going to be this cognitive dissonance, and your brain's going to go, the fuck you are. And if instead of assuming I am punctual, if we move into I am becoming punctual, now that dissonance is gone. And we can start to live into I'm going to eventually become punctual. If we want to be more organized, it's like I am becoming organized. And
Mm-hmm.
once we start to really, really write these identities down and assume them and repeat them, then we push ourselves into the direction of who we want to become. I remember one of my favorite exercises when it came to identity was the class I was in. We were talking about what energy identity do you want to be? Do you want to assume for yourself? And the instructor's like, I want to have the identity of a world class athlete. That's the energy profile that I want. And it didn't resonate with me whatsoever. I'm like, oh man, that's just boring. So I thought about this for months. Like, what identity do I want to live into energetically? And one day I was in my kitchen and I was preparing food, and my youngest daughter hopped up off the floor and started running around the couch for no damn reason. And that's when it clicked. That is my identity as an adult. I want childlike energy. So I want to behave childlike. So then I started to live into this childlike identity of energy, and that, it's snowing out there. I'm about to go run and jump in it and make angels and throw my kids around and sleds and the works, throw snowballs, just goof off like a big kid. Because that's the identity I want to live into, is this fun, childlike. But also, when I look at my work, responsible is part of my identity. So it's a fun mixture of the two, because many times childlike can be irresponsible. It's like the 40-year-old guys that you see that are basically just big adolescents. So
Yeah,
got some
I
of
hear
both.
that. I hear that, and I think if it's aligned with who you really are, that works and it's great. And if you don't go in and ask yourself the same questions we ask those toddlers, then it's going to have the same dissonance if it's not aligned.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's so much work. I mean, just coming off the summit weekend, it's like, yeah, you can pretend over and over again, but that creates dis-ease if it's not aligned with who you really are. So it's like when we don't stop and pause and ask and be inquisitive and really are willing to listen to, like, who are we really without our programming, without our wounds, without our, without the projections that are put onto us, what does that look like? I think sometimes we think we know, but until we really like sit and feel it, know it, see it, it to me, like, I think I've claimed things that weren't me that then felt no different than the affirmation that wasn't true. I think affirmations can be a starting place to get you somewhere. And like eventually, if you're living in untruth, it will reveal itself. Your life will not get easier. It will get less easy. And then it's like, oh, now what?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I'm not poo-pooing what you said. I think it makes a lot of sense. But it feels aligned to you, and that's why it works. And I think that's a key piece that like we have to pull
Yeah, yeah.
forward, because if
Well, I
we
mean,
miss that part, it doesn't work.
there's an assumption that who we are is static, and there is a bigger piece to that. And who do we want to be?
Well,
Because
I'm coming at it from the full blown, like soul level, like we're here for a reason. And we do have an authentic self that is in there. It evolves, but it also is, I mean, it is you and it exists at all times. And if we're looking at that and living from there, then that's a different thing than, you know what I mean? Than who we want to become. Like who I want to become, like I want to be me. That is always my answer. Authentic me in that moment. And that will evolve over time, but it doesn't get super far from where I started. You know what I mean? I mean, over the course of time, obviously doing the work evolves. There's like a transformation that can happen. But I feel like the transformation is revealing and uncovering you, like who you really are. Like, why are you really here? How do you show up in the world?
Yeah. And what do you want? What do you
Yeah.
really, really want? I think authenticity is the key factor of whether, it's bullshit, there's dissonance. You can do affirmations and look at yourself in the mirror and say it. You could stand upside down, run around like a chicken every Wednesday at 3 o'clock. Whatever is authentic, whatever that ritual is that feels right and good and aligned to you, that's going to work. And yours might be different than mine, might be different than someone else's. But the key factor is it, are you aligned yourself? Are you being honest with yourself? That's the thing. So you're not kind of sitting on it and, there's a little bit of shame. It's like a little turd floating around. It's kind of shitty. A lot that looks really great, but there's a great, like everything looks clean except for that one turd floating around. You can't really ignore it because it's there and it's there, right? let me think of a cleaner example. In yourself.
Sometimes you see it, sometimes you smell it, sometimes you feel
you see it,
but it does exist.
But it. If you're being honest with yourself. And I agree with Lee. I think both what you're saying. On the one hand, yes, the core of you and your soul, your very, very core is, I believe, was when you were born to the end of life. It's the very, very core. How it's expressed, what we want, can shift and change. It can. When we're talking about labels and taking them off gently, right? There's also something to be said for, do we rip the label off and take some skin off, like a really cheap wax strip? Or do we coax it off? Do we coax it off slowly with warm water, with kindness to ourselves, with a little bit of patience, right? Don't just claw it off, because that hurts. Firsthand experience, that hurts. So, what do we want to do with those? Maybe we don't want them, right? Maybe they could be repurposed as strengths. What definition do we want to give them?
I love it whenever the labels really truly resonate with who you feel like you are deep down inside. Like, for instance, in my case, call me father and I glow, right? Call me dad, call me husband, and I'm like, hell fucking yes. You better believe it. But then call me stupid and we're going to have problems. Some of that, some of that label's got some wounding in it, and coming from early on childhood interactions. Like, call me stupid, and we got serious problems. But I'm curious. As I said that out loud, what labels do you two feel like y'all really resonate with? That whenever you say it out loud, I am this. Like, I am. What is it?
Loving. There's a label that I gave myself when I was 5 years old. And I want to share about this really quickly. I assigned a label to myself when my mom was very sad about missing her mom, who had passed away, my grandmother. She was very sad and she was crying, and I saw that. I came up to my mom and I hugged her. She was sitting down and I was standing, so I felt I was about her height. We were about the same height with her sitting and me standing. And I felt kind of powerful, and I held her as she was sad and teary. And I said, I'll be your mama. I'll take care of you. And it took me years to realize that was the formative seminal memory of me assigning a role, a label to myself, that I am responsible for other people, to take care of them for their emotions. Now, just like lots of wonderful things in this world, we can under and over index, right? Over and underdo. And so they're definitely, the bright side is I'm loving and I'm caring. And the dark side of that label is I have made myself physically ill, putting pressure on myself and demands to care for other people and be responsible for things that I had no business being responsible for.
Mm-hmm.
And they were hurting me. And that was at 5 years old. That's my quick label story.
Yeah.
Oh,
Good one.
Yeah.
Michelle, what's yours?
I mean, the obvious, right? I'm a mom. I'm a good mom. I'm a good partner. I'm a good friend. Like coming from love, meaning, not being an asshole, basically. But I'm a teacher. I'm a catalyst. I've always been a teacher. Ever since I can remember, I've found a way to teach.
Hmm.
So that's probably one of the biggest ones.
Mm. Oh,
I like that we all three of us leaned in towards the exercise I used to do. It was we have three categories and we have three things that we'll do in each category. And the three categories were energy, work, and love. And what identity do you want to assume in each category? Your energy category, your category, your love category. And I already shared my energy identity, but in work, I had a harder time figuring out what that was. And teacher really, really rings true. Coach is another good one. Facilitator. But it was so easy for me to figure out what that love identity was, the husband, the father, the friend. Like, that's really all those three mean so much to me.
Yeah.
hmm
I would put healing in the energy thing, I guess, just because that's become my main gig.
Hmm.
Even everything I teach involves healing. But I don't resonate with the word healer, which is funny to me. I just don't. I think I'm a catalyst for healing, but I think I'm my own healer, but you're yours and I can't heal you, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So
hmm
people use that word loosey goosey and it's fine. I get why they do. But if people call me a healer, I'm like, yes, and like I need to define that
Mm-hmm.
because I want to make sure that you're not putting me into like you don't have expectations that are unrealistic as far as I'm concerned.
Well, notice how many assumptions come up whenever we have some of these labels. That's another really key piece of our conversation today we've kind of missed. And how many assumptions come with the labels? Like, and not all of us are going to think the same things when we think about these specific labels. For great example right now is the label coach. And we look at across the nation how many different people call themselves coach. And really, the vast majority of them are actually teachers. It's amazing and how we all have different views on what these words mean. Like I'm curious, even whenever you say healer, like what kind of images pop up in your head?
I mean, right now it's light. I'm thinking about Reiki specifically, but it's a lot of energy. But it's awareness. Awareness is huge in the healing. Authenticity, love. I mean, ultimately it comes from love, I think. Oh, you froze. Okay, you're back.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, teacher, mentor, guide. And they're all kind of different things, but they blend together beautifully.
They do. As I hear you talk about your labels, Michelle, I am one, that's how I've seen you as like loving and caring and a healing spirit is how I would think of it. So, and then having my own reactions to the labels that you're talking about.
Hmm.
Like I've had a resistance to being to having a teacher role. Taken personality tests, career tests, right? Of like you take an assessment and it talks about the traits that most resonate with you, most compatible. And teaching, mentoring, helping has always been, they've always been some of the consistent categories. And yet I don't necessarily have the resonance, enough of a resonance to say, like healing at the end of sessions with folks, they'll say this felt very healing. It's a healing experience. They feel at peace, and they feel right at the end of our time together, they feel more peaceful, they feel more reconciled and more focused because they've been unblocked. Some crud that needed to be worked out, they worked out. And they got clear, they shed light, and now it's not so scary. A teacher, yeah, the resistance that we can have to labels. Again, I'm reflecting on what we were just talking about a few minutes ago. I hear a label and we make so many assumptions. But that's why they're efficient, because they come with a host of assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
It's a double-edged sword.
Well, and it makes it tricky. I mean, that it came up. It's funny that we're talking about this today because it came up so much during the course of the weekend when we were deep diving into healing, really. The definitions of words, it was like the number of times I got a ping to check in and ask people what that word meant to them because it mattered, like on a level that you just wouldn't even, oh, I never even considered that somebody might define the word that way. It's so fascinating because it all depends on our experiences and what we attach to the meaning of the word. And it's like it's so important because you can throw someone into a swirl, like a mental loop that is super not helpful if they are defining a word very differently from you. And it's like, oh, okay, well, that's good to know. Let's unpack that, or even Alina, like you saying the word teacher brings something up for you. Well, like, look at that. What does that mean? Where's that coming from? Why such a powerful response? It's visceral in your body. What does that mean? Let's look. So cool.
So we talk
Your
about the
weekend sounds
assumptions that
amazing. Oh, oh.
come with some of these labels. And sometimes it cracks me up to even think about it. Michelle, when you said healer, the image that came into my mind was this old woman in a muumuu with beads hanging off of her everywhere, with like a turban thing on her head. So oh man, so that's the image I got when you said healer.
Funny.
So I just turned around a second ago and looked outside. It is white out there.
It's so pretty.
It's unreal. Let me show you all this. This is wild. It
It's
is
just white.
white.
Your focus. It needs to focus on the window. You got to say something, Lee.
There we go.
Lee, I need you to
Yes.
say something because I have it on speaker view and you're not big.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm gonna say some words that way you can see what I'm doing.
There it is.
Look, yeah, it is white. It is coming down. I have never in my life seen snow like that in Louisiana. The closest I ever came, I was in Maine. So, holy sheez whiz. That's a lot of snow.
Are your kids home to see it?
Oh yeah, yeah. They shut down school last I think it was Thursday when they found out a storm might be coming in. So,
This is such a great example of perspective because it's like for me, that's just normal. Like there's nothing, but if I see a palm tree, I'm like, oh my God, it's a palm tree. They're so pretty and they just make me
Yeah.
think warm and, bright and sunny. And
Same.
but
Same.
the snow, I'm like, yeah, that's my whole
Yes.
fucking life.
mhm.
Yeah.
All right, sounds like a good place to go into the round table. Y'all ready?
Sure.
Sure. Let's do it. All right. Let's take our normal order if you're ready there, Alina.
All right. I think well, we talked about for this time around, we're gonna just do our one. Yeah,
I've
that's what
got
we're
three
gonna
ready to
do.
go.
Oh, you've got three. You went and
Well,
changed on me, young man. Cool. What are the three takeaways on labels and identity? One, survey. Like, what are the labels? Take a look at. Where are you? What are they? Two, are they like in? Are they stuck? Take a look at the glue. That's how I'd summarize it. Are they like, do you notice if it's a label that's adhered really, really well, like an Amazon package label? Or is it the kind that just flips right off? That's an important part to understand what you're doing with it. And then 3, take a look at what you want to do with it. Do you want to lean into it? Do you want to use it as a strength? Or do you want to set it aside and say, you know what, that's someone's impression. Okay, I'm going to go live my life now. Yeah. Michelle, what about you?
1, 2, 3. Are we doing 1, 2, 3 all together? All right. I like it. Oh gosh, they just came in and they just went out. Give me a hot second. Oh, I think notice the labels that you have, right? That you notice, and maybe identify them as this one feels like warm and fuzzy and this one feels cold and prickly. And then like it gives you a place to start as far as like what they mean to you, because I think knowing what the labels mean to you matters. It gives you more information. 2, how attached are you to said labels? And is it helping? I think sometimes we attach to labels and they put a lot of pressure on us, or they take something away from us, or they create some version of perfectionism. I don't know why labels seem to bring that in, but they do. So just that's my number 2. And my number 3 is, and this one might be a weird thing to say, but if you took all your labels away and just sat with sort of that, I'm going to say void or emptiness, how does that feel? Is that terrifying to you to exist without labels? Like, can you just sit, take all the labels away, and then just sort of get inquisitive? Not even sort of, do get inquisitive with how do you feel energetically without words? How does your physical body feel without words? Or like we say, oh, my shoulders are tight. And then just saying it, our shoulders get more tight. We like amplify the thing. So can you just like sort of remove the things, remove the labels, and just assess without the words? Because I think sometimes the words get in the way. I think they're very helpful, but sometimes they get in the way. So, and if that terrifies you, like when you take the labels away and you feel like, holy fuck, well, who am I then? Sit with that for a minute, because you get to play with that. You get to play and be inquisitive with yourself about, well, who are you really? And I think that's a beautiful thing. I don't know. That's where I landed.
Another nuance to what you just said there is that what labels do we put on other things, and take a look at those labels as well. Because that's such a key piece of it too. Have I assumed something else is good or bad or so on and so forth? But so getting into my 3, I wrote them kind of scratch as we were talking. So this may be messy, but good. Number 1 is take a good close look at exactly what labels you've accepted and what labels you've heard, so on and so forth. So, in doing my work with Ken Mossman in particular, the leader of the Integrated Adult Male Program, in both of the times that I've been in his programs, we always start off with the labels that we've been assigned or heard or so on and so forth. So, in his men's program is, what does it mean to you to be a man? What does it mean to you to be feminine? What is feminine? What does it mean? So we can continue to keep expanding that. Whenever we went to his intimacy retreat, it was, what is intimacy? What does it mean? And we started to look at what we've heard around intimacy from parents, friends, media, religion, all these different places that these labels can add meaning. Like, what have we been taught about what these labels mean? And really take a look at those and kind of lay them out. What does it mean to be good? What does it mean to be bad? What does it mean to be right? What does it mean to be wrong? What does it mean to be smart? So that's number 1. Take a look at every label that you could ever have assumed what it meant, and take a look at it and what does it really truly mean to you. Number two is going to be set aside the ones that no longer serve. Challenge them. We don't have to accept things as being true just because it's what we've heard, that's what we've been told. For instance, the labels that I was given as a young man, I've mentioned it previously. It's like my grandfather said, "You stupid motherfucker," or "You goddamn little prick." So for years, I was a prick. And guess what? I lived into that label really well. I continued to grow into being a prick. And as a middle schooler, you better damn well believe I was a prick. I feel sorry for my teachers in that in that era. So, Miss Wadzak, I do apologize. So, set aside the ones that no longer serve. If it's I'm bad at something, maybe it's time to go try that thing again. If you picked up guitar years ago and played it for a day and went, "I'm not good at that," challenge that. Go pick up that guitar again. Spend some time with it. See what happens. Or if it's like for me, I gave myself the label that whenever I was a mechanic, that I could not be a salesman. I'm too honest. In my head, salesman meant dishonesty. And after running my own business, I had to challenge that label of salesman equals dishonest, because then I had to be a salesman running my business. And come to find out, you can be a salesman and be very honest and still be a very good salesman. In fact, that actually makes you a better salesperson to be honest, because then it sets you ahead of the pack. So set aside what doesn't work. Number three, take on the ones that do serve and live into them every day, even if it's the ones that you want to become. Take them on, write them down every day to keep them top of mind so that we can live into what it is that we want to become. For instance, if we go right back to that salesman example, if I want to be a great salesperson because I'm running a business and want to do it with honesty, like I just said, we might write down on our page, work, honest salesperson. Now we're going to figure out how to do sales in a way that resonates with honesty, which is a great thing. So that's it. That's what I have. It's especially this becoming piece. Who do we actually really want to be? And make it real. Live into it. As long as it's realistic, because if I try to put the identity of jockey on myself, I'm a big guy. It's not happening. Look at that. Must have done something good. Y'all are speechless.
I'll unmute. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Oh, screw you two.
That was not the entire sentence. There was a strategically placed pause. What you said is relatable and important to keep in mind. And yeah, absolutely. Amen.
Not too
And
rambly, huh?
no, I mean, you're talking about labels that you've applied to yourself and empowering and right. I think we've all the three of us have talked about, sort of danced with similar ideas, right? Similar ideas of taking charge of you, understanding you, discerning authentic you, and deciding what to do with what, what you've been stamped with, what you might want to pick up and stamp yourself. Like, how do you want to be? Or setting all the stamps aside, like Michelle was talking about. Do you need the stamps? Do you need the, I think Michelle said stamp. I was thinking about sticker books. Like a child playing with sticker books. Like, oh, I like the apple. And, I like the hardworking. Oh, I like the caretaker. Oh, I love The Good Mom.
Yeah. Oh, you brought out some complexity
Ooh,
just then.
product idea,
Hmm.
book of labels
The Book of
in
Labels.
a workshop. Yeah, like literally a sticker book in a workshop,
Hmm.
a group workshop, and part of the workshop will involve labeling, literally labeling each other and ourselves.
Is it coming with a jump to conclusions, Matt, like The Office? Office
That
Space? Sorry,
might,
not The Office, but Office Space.
that's, haven't tried that one.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I
Well,
don't
all
know. As we
right
were
then.
going through our three, I just kept thinking about parenthood and how much we label our kids based on ourselves versus just get to know who they really are. It's fascinating to me. I'm not trying to open a whole nother door, but I'm definitely in reflection mode.
I hope everybody else is too.
Me
So,
too.
with that, we leave you with your thoughts.
Yeah, love it.
Thank you for listening to That's a Great Point with Alina Doran, Michelle Albers, and Lee Smart. To find out more about how we can serve you, check out our links in the show description. Thanks for playing along.